Okay, so we all know the feeling, right? You open up TikTok just for like a quick little scroll, and then boom, suddenly like hours have gone by.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But have you ever actually stopped to think about why that happens? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Today, we're going on a deep dive into like the heart of TikTok, the algorithm, to understand how it keeps us, coming back for more.
Absolutely. And I think what's so fascinating about it is the level of personalization. This isn't just about TikTok showing you videos that you might like. It's really about predicting what will keep you engaged down to the second, based on your
So it's
interactions.
not even just about what I like or what I follow. It's tracking everything I do.
Yeah. Every tap, every pause, how long you watch certain videos, it all feeds into how this AI, this algorithm, understands what you like.
Okay, so let's say, I don't know, I pause on a video. Maybe it's about, I don't know, like a flat earth theory. Does that mean the algorithm thinks I'm super into that? Even if I was honestly just kind of confused for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. The AI doesn't really understand your intent. It only knows what you do.
Mm.
So that pause to it is like a huge signal that you're interested, and it's going to start showing you more stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And this is where something called collaborative filtering comes in. So basically, the AI is going to connect you with other users who have done similar things, and it kind of creates this feedback loop that shapes your For You page.
Wait, hold on. Collaborative filtering. What is that, like a group project for AI or something?
Yeah, pretty much. It's basically analyzing the behavior of millions of users to find patterns and predict what'll keep you, hooked. So think about it this way. If you and like 1,000 other people all pause on that flat Earth video, the AI is going to think that there's something compelling about that type of content, even if you know it's not true.
Okay, this is where it gets a little creepy for me.
Hmm.
So the algorithm is learning from me, but also like everyone else's weird rabbit holes.
Exactly. And that's how trends can spread so quickly. Both the harmless ones and the ones that can be potentially harmful. Because the algorithm just sees that a lot of people are engaging with something. Maybe it's like a new dance, or maybe it's like, a conspiracy theory, and it just wants to show it to more people.
So like, let's say there's a video about, I don't know, that birds aren't real
Mm.
meme.
Mm.
It could end up going totally viral just because the algorithm is picking up on it, getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is how this kind of plays on like psychology,
Hmm.
Like people are just naturally drawn to information that confirms their existing beliefs, right? And the algorithm, by feeding us more of that, might actually end up strengthening our biases without us even realizing it.
So even if I start out watching something ironically, like that birds aren't real thing,
Huh.
I could end up actually believing it if the algorithm keeps showing me similar stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. The AI is always learning and trying to figure out what you like, even as even as what you like changes.
This whole algorithmic prison thing that Gen Z jokes about is starting to feel very real to me now.
Right.
Like, are we actually that powerless against it? Can we do anything?
Well, I don't think it's so much about fighting it. It's more about understanding the rules of the game. Because this AI, it's not necessarily evil or anything. It's just designed to keep people engaged. And it does that by, kind of playing on, I guess you could say, like our psychological vulnerabilities.
Exploiting. That's a little harsh, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe. But think about it. Every notification, every time someone shares your video, you get a little hit of dopamine, right? And that makes you want to keep coming back for more. That's what's called reinforcement learning. So the AI learns what actions lead to those dopamine hits, and then, changes its strategy accordingly.
Okay, I see what you mean. So it's not that the algorithm is like deliberately evil. It's just really, really good at its job, which is to keep us scrolling, even if it means kind of using, our desire for those little rewards against us.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of how it's working, Because even if it's happening on a subconscious level, just recognizing it is the first step toward regaining some of that control.
So I guess the big question is, what can we actually do about it? Is there any way to escape this digital echo chamber?
Yeah.
Or are we just doomed to keep scrolling forever?
Well, it's not about escaping entirely. I don't think that's really possible. It's more about being a little more conscious, a little more deliberate about how we interact with it.
Okay, I'm listening. How do we start taking back control?
Well, one thing you can try is to be more careful about, what you actually click on. Because remember, the algorithm is tracking everything. So if you see a video and you're like, ugh, I really disagree with that, just keep scrolling.
Yeah, but that's so hard sometimes. Like when it's something crazy, you almost can't help but watch, you know?
Yeah, I know. Our brains are like wired to notice the really dramatic stuff. But if you can resist that urge, you're actually sending a signal to the AI that you're not into that kind of content. It's basically like saying, this isn't what I'm looking for.
Okay, so basically we can train the algorithm to show us less of the stuff we don't want to see. But what about the stuff we do like? Like, is there a way to tell it to give us more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow the creators whose videos you really enjoy and really interact with them. Like, leave comments, like their videos, things like that. You can also use the search function to find more topics you're genuinely interested in. Be proactive.
So it's almost like instead of just passively scrolling, I should be actively trying to build my own little corner of TikTok. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of designing your perfect for you page if you think about it like that. But there's another side to this whole algorithm thing that we should probably talk about, which is how it affects, not just individual users, but like society as a whole.
That's what I find so interesting about this whole thing, but also kind of scary. Like we talked about misinformation with that birds aren't real example. But what other kind of impact is it having on a bigger scale?
Well, the big thing to remember is that the algorithm really prioritizes engagement, like above all else. And that means it can sometimes create this environment where, sensationalized content spreads really easily, even if it's not true.
Oh, wow. So basically anything that gets a strong reaction, even if it's anger or outrage, is going to get pushed to the top, whether or not it's actually true.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of how it works. And that can be really dangerous, especially for younger users who might not have, the critical thinking skills to figure out what's real and what's not. It's why media literacy is so important, especially these days.
Okay, so it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Mm.
But let's be real, TikTok isn't just about conspiracy theories and all that bad stuff, right? There's a lot of good stuff on there too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's important to remember the positive side of things, too. Like, TikTok has helped so many creators, find an audience. There's so much creativity and humor on there, and people are connecting with each other in ways that they never could have before.
Yeah, like all those dance challenges, those funny skits, even those educational videos that explain complicated stuff in a really fun way.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, it's a place where they can find people who are into the same things they are. Maybe they feel like they don't really fit in anywhere else, and TikTok helps them connect with people who get them.
That's what I think is so cool about the algorithm. Like, yeah, it can be creepy sometimes, but it can also bring people together in a really cool way.
For sure. But even when we're talking about the positive stuff, it's still important to, keep a critical eye. Because at the end of the day, the algorithm is still trying to keep you on the app, and it's going to use whatever it can to do that, playing on your emotions, even if they're positive emotions.
I see what you mean. So even when I'm watching, I don't know, like a super wholesome video about animals getting rescued or something, I should still be aware that the algorithm is playing a role, like pushing those buttons to keep me scrolling.
Exactly. That's the thing. Awareness is really key. But speaking of the good stuff, we also have to talk about how TikTok has helped give a voice to a lot of people who might not have had one before. Like, people from marginalized communities are able to share their stories with a huge audience now.
Yeah, that's so important. It's really given a platform to people who might not have had one otherwise. Like
Yeah.
they can connect with people all over the world and challenge the way things have always been done, you know?
Exactly. And that's where the algorithm can actually be really helpful. It can surface content from a really diverse range of people, which can be really powerful for inclusivity and social change.
So it's not really about the algorithm being good or bad. It's just a tool, right?
Yeah.
And like any tool, it could be used for good things or bad things.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a dance between what we want and what the algorithm wants. And the more we understand the steps, the better we can navigate it?
That reminds me of something you said earlier about how the algorithm kind of plays on our, what was it, psychological vulnerabilities? Is that like a deliberate thing that TikTok is doing? Or is it just like a side effect of the way these algorithms are built?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people are asking right now, and there's no easy answer. Some people think that, these apps are designed to be addictive on purpose, like they're exploiting our weaknesses to make money, but other people think it's more of an accident. The goal is just to keep people engaged, and the best way to do that is to appeal to our emotions, like our need to connect with other people, feel validated, experience something new, all that.
So it's kind of a gray area.
Yeah, it's complicated, and I think it really highlights how important it is for these tech companies to be more transparent. Like, we need to know how these algorithms work, what information they're using, and what they're doing to make sure they're not causing harm.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's our information, our attention, our lives that are being used, right?
Exactly. We have a right to know how the system works, and what kind of impact it's having on us. But you know what? It's not all bad news. There are actually things we can do to be smarter about how we use these platforms and take back some control.
Okay, give me the goods. Like, what else can we do other than, just being more mindful of what we click on and trying to curate our feeds a little better? What else have you got?
There's actually one more thing I want to touch on. It's about how the algorithm is affecting us, not just in terms of what we watch, but like who we are.
Yeah.
Especially for Gen Z, who basically grew up with TikTok.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, they're so aware of the algorithm. They even make jokes about it.
Right. They'll be like, oh, I'm stuck in algorithmic prison again. But at the same time, they're super savvy about how to use it. Like, they'll predict what's going to show up next on their For You page, or they'll
Yeah.
call out sponsored posts. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's almost like they're playing a game with the algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. And they're shaping trends too. Like, they'll use irony or satire to make fun of it.
Like those videos where they just show like the most boring stuff, like what's in my fridge or whatever. It's hilarious.
Exactly. They know their data is being used, they know they're being watched, and they're finding really clever ways to push back.
It's kind of like a form of digital activism, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. They're using the platform itself to critique the way it works.
It makes you wonder what's going to happen in the long run. Are they going to figure out how to break free from the algorithm? Or are they going to become even more dependent on it?
That's a good question. I think we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. But one thing's for sure, this generation is approaching technology in a completely different way than we did. They're a lot more skeptical, a lot more critical.
Yeah, totally. Okay, but let's be real for a second. Just because you know how the algorithm works doesn't mean you're immune to its effects. Like, you're still going to get that dopamine hit when you see a bunch of likes, and you're still going to feel that pressure to keep up with everyone else, right?
Yep.
What advice would you give to someone, anyone really, who's feeling overwhelmed by all of that?
Well, first of all, I would say remember you have control. Like, you can choose what you watch, you can choose who you follow, you can choose how much time you spend on the app.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to everyone else, especially on TikTok, where everything looks so perfect all the time.
I know. And it's important to remember that what you're seeing is just a tiny sliver of someone's life. Like, they're only showing you the good stuff, the curated highlight reel. So don't compare your everyday life to that. It's not a fair comparison.
Yeah, a carefully constructed online persona. Isn't that the truth? Okay, but seriously, it's good to be reminded that we have choices. Like, we don't have to just passively consume everything that's thrown at us.
Exactly. If there are accounts that are making you feel bad about yourself, unfollow them. Turn off notifications if they're too distracting. You could even make a separate account just for like mindless scrolling so that your main account is more about connecting with people and seeing things that inspire you.
Okay, those are some good tips. But what about the bigger picture? Like this feeling that the algorithm is changing the way we think, changing what we value, changing how we see the world. Is there anything we can do about that?
Well, I think one of the most important things is education. The more we understand about how these algorithms work, the better we can protect ourselves from their influence.
So it's about being more media literate,
Hmm.
thinking critically about what we're seeing online, and being aware of how our perceptions are being shaped.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about individual responsibility either. Like, we need to be putting pressure on these companies to be more transparent and accountable. We need to know what data they're collecting, how they're using it, and what they're doing to prevent harm.
Because it's not just about TikTok. It's about the whole digital world and how these algorithms are shaping our lives, our relationships, everything.
That's exactly it. This is a much bigger conversation than just one social media platform. This is about understanding how technology is changing who we are and taking back some control.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I just want to leave our listeners with something to think about. The next time you're scrolling through TikTok, just take a second and ask yourself, who's really in control here? Me or the algorithm?
That's a really powerful question because ultimately it's up to us to decide how we want to interact with technology. We can choose to be more mindful, more intentional, and create a digital world that's more aligned with our values.
Absolutely. So let's all try to be a little more aware, a little more deliberate, and remember that we're not just passive consumers. We have the power to shape this digital world together.